Well, hey there. In this video, I got my friends John and Jesse with me, and we are going to talk about the role of a worship drummer in a worship band and how they're a significant part of leading not only the band, but also the congregation in worship. So I guess you could say, like the saying that Jesse has here, it's kind of like leading, the role of a drummer to lead from the throne, like not the throne room of God, but the drum throne. So when as you tune in, let us know where you're watching from. Let us know what questions you have, specifically if you have questions about worship drums, right? A lot of you I know are worship leaders tuning in. So if you have any questions about musically directing the drummer on your team or anything like that, these guys are experts and they could definitely help you out. We're going to be live here for roughly maybe about 15 minutes. This backstory is we just finished up a shoot today in YouTube space here in Toronto, and we're waiting for the footage to offload. So I thought it would be fun to hop on here with these guys to talk about worship drumming. So I love how overexposed we look right now on this on my phone.
If we tap it, will it?
Maybe. I don't think it's gonna. I don't think it's gonna do it. That's okay. Oh well, we're like super white and blown out. Let me see here too. Hey guys, go ahead and comment. Oh, there we go. Awesome. So thanks for whatever vids for commenting. What can I do to make it sound more full? So great. Keep asking these questions. We'll get to this question here in a few minutes. But let's just talk about the role of a drummer in a worship band, and just like how they can help lead and facilitate worship, even though they're sitting on the drum throne. They're not at a mic. So I think you've thought a lot about this, Jesse. So as a drummer, and just to introduce you, Jesse's a worship leader here in Toronto at what church?
People Church.
People Church. But he's also a drummer, fantastic drummer. I heard him today playing, messing around on the set. So what does it mean to you to lead worship from the drum throne?
Yeah, I mean, drumming has always been for me my first love, and I've been playing drums in church since I was like 9, 10 years old. My dad was a worship pastor, so I just grew up in that environment. And from a young age, and I'm sure there's lots of you out there that have been in church your whole life, and you hear from a young age, oh wow, you're so talented, you're so gifted, and as Christians sometimes we don't know how to take a compliment, but then it started to be evident to me that there was truly something about God's presence in worship, and then the power that the drums hold within that worship setting, that I needed to take that seriously. It's not just a gig. You're not just showing up and playing songs. It's like you have the ability in drumming to break chains, to bring healing, to see people free of addictions. It's just like a vocalist. Like you listen to music and it ruptures your soul in some points. Someone hits a high note and you're just like, wow, that's something I needed. And then when drumming, for me, it's just I love, it's my ultimate form of worship is using the gift that I've been given and putting it back into God's kingdom. So the role of a worship drummer in my head is you're the front line. It's just if you're beating down the doors of sin and shame, the band is going to follow you. And drums are one of the most ancient instruments, because all you have to do is hit something for it to be a drum. And so you look at there's so many stories in the Bible about music and processions and leading the way and leading the charge. And so as a drummer, there's just something so powerful about leading from the throne. We're often in the back, but again, the first shall be last, all those things that are true in God's word, that the best leader is someone that's supporting everybody else. It's not the front person who's just flashy and all about a show. It's I'm going to sit back here and do the best that I can and follow the leading of the Holy Spirit, whoever's worship leading, being attentive to the room. And I think this is all what we kind of want to touch on here. But you hold so much power and authority, and it's just, it unlocks something. It truly does when you have a worship drummer who's doing it for God, not themselves, who puts the heart before the beat. And does that?
Yeah, no, that's super good. Unpack a little bit more what that last phrase that you just said, I know this is kind of the phrase I hear a lot. I don't know if you made it up or wherever it came from.
On the t-shirt.
Yeah, there you go. The heart, putting the heart before the beat. And what does that look like? And thanks for asking. Keep asking those questions, guys. John's going to chat a little bit more about this heart before the beat, as well as whatever insight you have to add to it. And then we'll answer some of these questions.
Yeah, so heart before beat basically is just a reminder to always put first, what we're doing. If we, in my opinion, if we remove the worship aspect, we're literally just drummers. So if we remove the heart aspect, really we're there for us, for ourselves, for a good time. There is a time and place for that. In a church context, it's selfless, not selfish. So putting the heart before beat is literally saying that I would become less so he could become greater. Keeping that at the forefront. It's a position of the heart where we want to serve and not take. So it's give, less take.
Totally.
Heart before beat.
What tips from either of you guys do you have for worship leaders who are wanting to be able to connect better with their worship drummer, to be able to be on the same page, and just be able to follow even each other sometimes in a worship environment?
Yeah, I'll just take it, and then Jesse, you could build off of that. Yeah. But we have different contexts. But I would just say have a conversation as a worship leader with your drummer. Clearly communicate your expectation. From my perspective, the drummer is the backbone. So I would actually let the drummer know, hey, I'm relying on you. I'm depending on you. I'm leaning on you for what we're doing on Sundays. And I know that seems like a lot to place in terms of responsibility on a drummer, but I think it comes with the territory, let alone all the technical side of that. Yeah. But my personal opinion, a drummer could make or break a moment. If they are supposed to be building, because that's kind of what God is doing, and prayers are lifted up in that moment, and instead of building, the drummer just kind of thinks like, oh, I'm going to fade out here. You could totally break the atmosphere and what God is about to do or in the process of doing in that moment. But
yeah, do you have any other tips for kind of worship leader working better with a drummer?
The biggest thing that's been an adjustment and incredible for me is like seeing the change from like playing drums 15, 16 years ago in church, where we had little wedge monitors on a mic stand and I was playing with hot rods, to I'm now wearing professional in-ears, like playing full sticks, full volume all the time. Yeah. I mean, not, dynamics are great. Always use dynamics. But is like when I got introduced to using an MD, someone that kind of takes some of the guesswork out of where the leader is going or what the room is wanting at that point. Because sometimes, especially in this age of in-ears, like we're often cut out. Yeah. From the sound of the room, how much people are singing, all that kind of stuff. And so having an MD, like I'm also like I play drums, but I also worship lead. So when I'm leading, I get to follow the MD and trust them, and then that flows to the drummer, and then the drummer has more confidence as well, because like as a drummer, I love leading from the throne without an MD, because then I can kind of follow and dictate where we're going. But in a lot of churches now where you've got so many people coming in and out of team, you've got lots of different drummers, lots of different bass players, all that kind of stuff, having an MD who knows the worship leader and who's in tune with what the Spirit is doing in the room, that's huge. So if you've never done that and you have the capabilities, I'd say suggesting involving an MD in your Sunday mornings. But
music director, for those of you, if you don't know, so just the person in charge of directing the band musically. A lot of us as worship leaders are music directors, but if you're at a place to have someone help you out in that area, that's also great. So we got a couple minutes left before our files are almost done. Let's move forward so I can reach the comments here.
Going down.
Let's see what questions you guys have. Okay. So what can I do to make it sound more full? Asked whatever vids.
Play more?
Play more?
No. Well, I guess it depends to interpret the question, but whether it's a miking issue or whether the drummer is maybe not utilizing like the full range of sound that they can, like dynamics. There are different ways to approach it. So I don't know how to quite answer that question, to be honest, but I would say dynamics and just really exploring your kit, knowing like, you know, this is the range of sound that I can hit, and knowing how to fill it up when it's time. I don't know if that answers or is very practical, but it really comes down to just knowing the instrument that is in front of you and how to get the best sound out of it.
Practically speaking, I think if you mean overall sound, you can start involving tracks, which is something that you can look into, multi-tracks, loop community, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If you're talking specifically drums, practically like using bigger, lighter cymbals so that you can crash it and wash it to create a bigger spectrum of sound without completely overtaking the whole band. We were using heartbeat cymbals today, which are absolutely gorgeous cymbals, and you'll see a lot of worship guys now playing with like a 24-inch ride cymbal that they just hit constantly, and it doesn't overtake the band because it's light and it's big, so it's a lower pitch. It's not getting in the way of your electrics and your vocals and all that kind of stuff. On the toms, using coated heads sometimes instead of clear heads, you lessen the attack a bit, and then you sometimes get a warmer tone using bigger drums. These are like practical things that you can do to create a fuller drum sound. Yeah.
Those great tips. That's like drum tips gold right there. All right. Easiest way to get a new worship fat snare sound, looking for gear and EQ suggestions. Yeah, I think they're talking about like the
nice.
Bethel worship,
Yep.
like fat snare. How do you do that? My drummer and I, Luke, were talking about that a couple days ago.
On Instagram at Worship Drummer, you could find like a 15-second clip of David Whitworth giving his like whole rundown of how he tunes the lugs and all of that.
Nice.
Also, I interviewed him on the Worship Drummer podcast, and I think we got into that.
Nice.
And I also linked that in the show notes. I think if you go to worshipdrummer.com/019, you'll find that video I'm just talking
Wow,
about.
that's impressive.
There you go. Awesome. We've got a couple minutes, so we'll keep moving through these questions. Okay, Max, great question. I've been playing at church for 5 years now and finally got everyone on in-ears. Do you recommend starting to do backing tracks and cues instead of just the click track? So, yeah, should he start with just a click or both?
Jesse.
Yeah, what do you recommend?
Oh boy. I mean, I think making sure everyone's comfortable playing to a click, first and foremost.
Yeah.
Because you can't have tracks without a click.
Yeah.
And we're speaking tracks in terms of a predetermined arrangement of a song. If you just want like a pad, like a sound in the background, like a church front pad.
Yeah, church front pad.
Then that's a different story. But like bring a click to the table first, and then I would say then add the tracks, because tracks are really just meant to add to what you're doing as a band. A lot of churches want the big sound but only have a small number of people. So as long as those people are playing their parts in the way they should be, then the tracks are there just to fill the space. And then my church is the same way. You know, we've got drums, keys, and bass, and maybe an acoustic. Like, we have no electric players. I don't know where they all went, but they're gone.
I don't have any either.
Yeah, and so it's like, you know, but the fact that the people on stage are playing their parts, it you know, if it was just us, it would feel quite empty. But then if people on stage are actually playing their parts, you don't notice that there's like 6 electrics going on, because it just becomes the sound. It becomes, people on stage almost take on the fact that there's a bigger sound than they're making, and then it's awesome. But I would recommend just making sure people are comfortable with the click first, because if you're hearing a click and then you're also hearing all these parts being played that people on stage aren't playing, it can be a bit overwhelming. So that'd be nice.
Great tips.
Good.
I have a video. One thing I recommend is you can play with click and pads at the same time. I have a video on how to do that in Ableton Live Session View. Just search how to run pads in Ableton Live Session View, and you should find it pretty easily. This is the last question. How do you communicate to your drummer when they are overplaying? This is a very common thing. You damn drummers.
Stop
Always
the
overplaying.
rehearsal.
Yeah.
But what if it's in a service though?
Well, yeah, at that point, you can't, like, there's no eye signal that I'm aware of that
Yeah.
you can give them. Again, I would go back to what I said earlier about just having, actually communicate those expectations. And if it's not an expectation, it becomes more of a, hey, this is something I've observed. And unless we're told, it's going to be very hard to correct something because we're not aware of it. So I just say, like, have the heart to heart. We're all in it to serve, hopefully, you know, in the specific role. And if I'm not doing a good job, I need to know so I can make the right correction.
I think those conversations, they're tough, but they're the real way to find out who's doing it for the heart and who's doing it for the beat. Because they are hard conversations. And, you know, being a leader doesn't mean that you're perfect or you have it all together. But if you've been placed in a position of leadership, then you have a requirement to have those conversations.
Preach.
You know? So it's like, yeah. So those conversations are tough. I've been on both ends of those conversations. Like playing drums at 11 years old, you don't have it all figured out. I don't have it all figured out at 26. So it's always a learning journey. But honestly, because you'll help people grow, and then you'll also help yourself stay true to the culture and the team that you really want to be building.
Yeah.
That's good.
Great stuff, guys. Real quick, that last question you slipped in there, Ricardo. How to set up a stereo mix on the X32 for our drummers in your monitors? Well, you just gotta probably, I believe you have to have, you could take 2 mix bus outs from your mixer and then just have one be the left and one be the right side of that stereo mix.
You link them.
And you link the outs.
YouTube it.
YouTube it, yeah, you'll find it. So guys, thanks. We gotta get done. Because our time in this space is up, and we want to honor that. So I want to invite you to go check out Worship Drummer on YouTube. Subscribe to them and on Instagram. And Jesse, what's your Instagram account?
Oh man,
Jesse
Boland Official.
Jesse Boland.
I'm a nice guy.
Official.
It's not an ego thing.
Yeah.
It's a brand thing.
It's a brand thing. Yeah. Go follow the Jesse. Hit them up. DM them with any questions. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us in this impromptu live. If you found this video helpful, hit that thumbs up button, share it, and of course subscribe to the Churchfront channel if you aren't already. So I'm going to awkwardly navigate to the end live button right now.
God bless.
I think it's this X button right here. Okay, bye.